Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Science Saga. Tonight, we drift together into one of Earth's most ancient dreams, a sea of sand so vast, it seems to have neither beginning nor end. The Sahara is not merely a desert, it is an immense book that the wind has been writing for millions of years. Every grain of sand is a memory of rivers that ran dry, forests that vanished, and civilizations that once breathed beneath this sky before being swallowed by the dunes. In this gentle lullaby of a journey, you will not rush. We will float across the Sahara as though drifting through a realm of memory, listening to the wind tell tales of buried ancient cities, extinct creatures, long-lost rains, and secrets that have never been deciphered. Amid the desert's vastness, you will feel the calm pulse of your own heartbeat more clearly, slow, quiet, and deep as the night settling over the dunes. Let the story carry you through 120 minutes of tenderness and wonder. Imagine standing before an endless golden ocean where the horizon melts into the haze of sunlight and every outline softens in primal silence. The wind caresses the dunes like fingers on an ancient instrument, producing a harmony only souls who have wandered this desert truly understand. The Sahara before you is not just sand and wind. It is a colossal book written by time, where every grain is a story and every ripple a memory of a world that once was. Yet the strangest thing is not its stillness, but the truth that this blazing golden land was once a lush green paradise. Around 11,000 years ago, when Earth's axis tilted a little more gently toward the sun, monsoon winds swept northward from the tropics. Heavy rains once fell where you now stand, not scattered drops, but torrents that carved rivers and lakes, nourished forests, and transformed the Sahara into a savanna so fertile it is almost unimaginable. In that moment, if you close your eyes, you can still feel the moisture of that ancient air. You can hear elephants walking across soft earth, hippos splashing, giraffes browsing thick canopies beside ancient lakes. Overhead, migrating birds flew in flocks like living ribbons dancing through the sky. They rested beside great rivers whose waters were so clear the sunlight sparkled on the riverbed. At the heart of that fertile land lay a lake so enormous that scientists today call it Mega Lake Chad, a true inland sea, dozens of times larger than the modern lake. A place where waves and forest winds met each warm summer evening. A place where life flourished as though Earth itself were breathing in green. The rivers that crossed the Sahara then formed a complex web, carrying rich silt and ancient creatures. Crocodiles drifted lazily in crystal waters. Antelope raced across dew-wet grass. Great herds gathered at dawn to drink. And when night fell, the Sahara sky glittered like a nearby universe, reflected perfectly in vast lakes that acted as natural mirrors of the galaxy. And then, the slow, relentless turning of the planet began to rewrite the story. The tilt of Earth's axis shifted, the monsoons retreated southward, the sun's heat grew longer and harsher, the rains grew rarer, then vanished entirely. The earth cracked, lakes sighed and shrank, trees withered and died. Herds migrated away, leaving behind footprints that fossilized beneath the sand we walk on today. A paradise became a challenge. A green realm became a desert. Year by year, decade by decade, century by century, the Sahara dried. When fierce winds swept across the cracked land, they lifted dust high into the sky, grinding it into fine powder. Those grains piled up, rolled into waves and rose into dunes, forming the immense sea of sand you see today. How strange that what we call a desert was born from an excess of life, from water, trees, mud and forest, all crushed by time into an endless golden carpet. And now, in this moment, you stand upon millions of years of transformation. If you listen very slowly, you can feel the motion of those ancient cycles. There is something soft, something tender in the wind, like a reminder that the Sahara is not empty. It is a repository of everything that ever existed, an archive of climates, of life, of civilizations that passed like shadows. When you walk through this sea of sand, it is hard to believe that beneath your feet once lay lake shores where wild beasts drank or endless green grasslands. Yet the Sahara still holds proof of that era. Cave paintings of cattle and hunters, fossils buried deep beneath the sand, rock carvings from a time when rain still touched this land. And in the desert's near-perfect silence, you can feel the flow of time more clearly. Not loud, not hurried, but slow, like the long breath of an ancient world. Here, time does not pass. It spreads, like the afternoon sunlight stretching across the dunes. When night falls, the temperature drops and the sky opens into an endless dome. The stars appear closer, brighter, as though the Sahara were a gateway to the cosmos. That same sky once looked down upon a green paradise teeming with life. Now it gazes upon an ocean of sand, a testament to the power of time. But the Sahara's story does not end here. This desert was shaped not only by nature, but also by the traces of humanity. Nomadic tribes once crossed it, civilizations touched it, and stories were carried away by the wind only to be returned in every grain of sand. When you stand among the silent dunes, the boundary between past and present feels so thin it almost dissolves. Each breath you take merges with the movement of millions of years, making you a tiny yet inseparable part of the Sahara's tale. And when you look toward the horizon where the dunes meet the sky, you will see the next chapter waiting. The Sahara still holds many layers of secrets yet to be revealed, and our journey has only just begun. Ahead lies the desert, me, you, and the chapters yet to come, where history, science, and dreams will blend like the gentle winds now gliding across the sand. When you stand in the Sahara and gaze into the distance where sand dissolves into air, it is hard to imagine that all this vastness could be born from the smallest of movements. Nothing on Earth changes noisily. It does not explode. It does not shake violently. It does not suddenly transform in a single moment. Earth changes with the slowness of the cosmos, with the gentlest tilts, the subtlest rotations, the almost invisible shifts of climate that are imperceptible within a human lifetime. And in that slowness, the Sahara gradually stepped out of its green age to become the world's largest desert. It all began with something that seemed too small to matter. Earth's axis shifted by just 1 degree. To humans, 1 degree, or even a few, means almost nothing. But to the planet, it is a shift powerful enough to alter entire weather patterns, climates, even the distribution of life. When Earth tilted more sharply toward the sun, North Africa received more direct sunlight. That pushed the tropical monsoon belt southward, weakening the rains that once nourished the Sahara. The rain did not vanish overnight. It diminished little by little, century by century, as though the sky was slowly closing the door on an old world. If you had lived then, you might not have noticed the climate changing. You would only have seen the grass grow yellower and sparser, the once wet lands drier by the end of each season, the lakes no longer filling, the rivers shrinking to reveal jagged, stony banks. Those changes were so gentle, you might have thought it was merely a harsher year or a late rainy season. But in truth, an entire astronomical cycle was unfolding. A motion of Earth invisible to the naked eye, yet clearly recorded by the universe's feet. The grass withered first, then the Earth cracked. Those cracks were not just signs of drought, they were the land's sigh as groundwater sank deeper and could no longer nourish the surface. Ancient rivers began to shrink, retreating like fading pulses. As the water withdrew, riverbeds revealed stones polished smooth by currents that once roared through them, now exposed beneath the sun like relics of a past unveiled when time brushed away the dust. And then, while the Sahara was still slowly transforming, humans appeared. Ancient tribes with herds of goats, sheep, and cattle entered this semi-arid land while it was still green. They did not know they were stepping into a new chapter of the Sahara's story, nor that their footsteps would accelerate desertification. Their livestock grazed the ground bare, nipping every new sprout. Vegetation already weakened had no chance to regenerate. The exposed soil became fragile before the wind. When hot eastern winds rose, they needed only the slightest force to lift the earth skyward. Each gust carried millions of dust particles, raising them 4 kilometers high and carrying them hundreds of kilometers away. Every footstep, every herd, every gust of wind, they all resonated together like instruments in a grand symphony of change. No one intended to create a desert. No one deliberately pushed the Sahara into barrenness. It was simply the convergence of nature and humanity, at the right moment, in the right way, within the planet's cycle. Within a few centuries, grasslands were erased. Soil was overturned by wind. Fine earth was polished into sand. Sand accumulated into layers, then layers into hills. Those early hills, shaped by time and wind direction, grew into ergs, vast seas of sand stretching to the horizon. Each erg continues to migrate with the seasons, as though it possesses its own soul. Wind lifts sand on one side and deposits it on the other, causing entire dunes to shift a little each year. Some dunes move so quickly that within a single human lifetime, they have completely changed position. The wind does not merely move sand, it transforms the Sahara into one of Earth's greatest sources of mineral dust that nourishes the planet. The phosphorus and iron blown from the Sahara across the Atlantic are what sustain the Amazon rainforest, the green lungs of our world. How strange. Dryness in one place feeds greenery in another, as though Earth uses two hands, one hot, one cool, to maintain its own balance. Meanwhile, the Sahara's ancient rivers slowly turned into vast dry channels, then into fossils. Seen from satellite, you can clearly trace their winding veins, not of sand, but of riverbeds that once brimmed with water. Though the water vanished thousands of years ago, the shape of the flow remains, a reminder that water once ruled here. Sometimes the Sahara briefly reveals its former beauty in rare events called super blooms. When an unusual rain falls at just the right moment, seeds buried deep beneath the sand for decades suddenly awaken. Entire regions explode into carpets of flowers, purple, yellow, white, like a fleeting miracle. But the magic lasts only weeks before heat and wind scorch it away, as if the Sahara is reminding us that it still remembers being a green savanna, but that memory can only live for a moment. As these changes unfolded, ancient tribes began painting on rock walls scenes of their lives, people paddling boats on rivers that no longer exist, herds grazing beneath trees long gone, wild animals hunted across plains that are now dunes. That art shows they lived in harmony with a completely different Sahara, one with water, forests, great beasts, and green. But climate change was unstoppable. As rains grew rarer, as vast lakes shrank into puddles, as wind took command, those tribes were forced to leave. They migrated following water, leaving behind empty caves, rock markings, broken pottery, and the soul of a life buried beneath meters of sand. And then, about 5,000 years ago, the Sahara settled into the form we recognize today. The sun grew harsher. Summer temperatures soared past 50 degrees Celsius. At night, the mercury plunged to mere degrees, as though the desert possessed two opposing personalities. That extreme temperature swing cracks rock, shatters soil, makes sand scorching by day and freezing by night. Sandstorms blot out the sun, turning the blue sky into an orange sea, making everything tremble as though submerged in a golden dream. Amazingly, the desert is never just one color. It holds hundreds of shades. Pale gold at dawn, silvery white at noon, deep orange in the afternoon, blood red at sunset. Each hue reflects a different moment of the day and a different chapter in the Sahara's history. Yet the Sahara's transformation has never ceased. Right now, as you listen, Earth's climate continues to shift. Science predicts that in roughly 10,000 years, the Sahara may turn green again, then dry, then green once more, following the Milankovitch cycles of Earth's tilt and orbit. The Sahara is not dead. It breathes, it moves, it changes color with the planet's rhythm. You can feel it when you stand in this endless sea of sand. Every breeze carries the taste of ancient minerals. Every grain sliding across your skin recalls lost rivers. Every cold night makes your own warmth mingle with the desert's breath. The Sahara is a living body, slow, vast, and older than all human memory. When you gaze toward the gently curving horizon, you realize that every change in the Sahara leads to something deeper. It opens a door to the past. Because beneath this sand lie greater mysteries, swallowed civilizations, fossils of colossal creatures, meteorites fallen like messengers from the cosmos. The Sahara has only begun to tell its story. And right at the boundary where shadow meets sky, the next chapter awaits. A chapter where every touch of wind seems to stir the question, what lies buried beneath this golden sand? If you ever thought the Sahara was utterly barren, you are not wrong, but not entirely right either, because beneath the heavy, burning sand, water still flows in silence. It makes no noise. It does not appear before human eyes. It hides deep within the earth, like the lingering memories of an ancient green Sahara. To truly understand the Sahara, you cannot merely look at the surface sand. You must look beneath, where secrets continue to live even as the world above has changed. When you walk across sun-glittering sand, it is almost impossible to believe that the ground beneath your feet was once the bed of lakes, rivers, even seas. Over thousands of years, water withdrew, evaporated, vanished, but its traces remain, like the dried veins of earth that have never truly died. And if you know how to listen, you can sense the faint presence of water, like the echo of tides from the past. The first NASA satellite images of the Sahara stunned scientists. From above, they saw vast channels stretching dozens, even hundreds of kilometers, not traces of wind or sand, but of ancient rivers. Those rivers once carved through mountains, carrying silt hundreds of miles away. Now they lie dormant like sleeping dragons, buried beneath meters of sand. Some rivers were so wide that if you stood on one bank, the opposite shore faded like the horizon. But the water is gone. It left only its shape, an empty mold, like the shadow of something that existed and then dissolved. Among them was a river scientist called Tamanrasset, a giant that once emptied into the Atlantic, rivaling Africa's greatest rivers today. It flowed through lands that are now dunes hot enough to warp metal left in the sun. And then, as the Sahara dried, it vanished, but not completely. Parts of the Tamanrasset still carry water underground, silent flows like the final breath of a green millennium. Deeper into the Sahara, you encounter things even harder to believe. Mysterious lakes that appear where no one expects them. Some exist for a few years, then disappear. Some sit alone amid hundreds of miles of golden sand, their water a deep blue like the eye of an ancient creature. They have no visible river feeding them, no rain, no obvious source. They simply appear, exist quietly, then quietly retreat. Explorers once discovered a lake deep in the Sahara with no river traces around it. When they tested the water, it was cool. Not rainwater, but water from an ancient aquifer accumulated tens of thousands of years ago when the Sahara was wet. It was like finding a single tear left from a cry uttered millennia earlier. And like all fragile things, that lake did not last long. It vanished as mysteriously as it came. A secret the desert chose not to share with humanity. There are waters that do not lie on the surface, but deep underground, flowing along their own paths, unbound by the rules of the world above. They sustain the tiny oases that quietly endure in the desert, oases like faint but resilient heartbeats. Each oasis is a miracle of nature, a round patch of green like a drop of water, surrounded by swirling sand and wind. Date palms sink roots deep to drink from ancient underground reservoirs formed during the Ice Age, when the climate was utterly different. That is why, despite almost no rainfall, some places in the Sahara still have water to live. The water does not come from the sky. It comes from Earth's memory. The Tuareg nomads believe underground water is the breath of the earth. They say the land is still alive, still remembers its green past, and those aquifers are the Sahara's way of retelling the old story. Science calls them the Nubian and Sac aquifer systems. The Tuareg simply call them the source of life. But the greatest mystery lies even deeper. When wells are drilled into the Sahara, layers of sediment reveal seashells, fish bones, fragments of coral, things that can only exist in marine environments. That is no surprise, because the Sahara was once a sea, not a small sea, an ocean. Millions of years ago, when Earth was still shaping its continents, North Africa lay beneath shallow seas. Vast waves lapped against rocky shores. Marine creatures swam beneath skies where you now see only sun. The sand dunes of today are ancient seabed, polished by wind and baked golden by time. It is like a story written twice, first in water, then in sunlight. Today, when you see a dune hundreds of meters high, you are looking at mineral grains that were once the ocean floor. Every grain of sand is a tiny fragment of an ancient sea. Every salt block found deep underground is the remnant of evaporated seawater crystallized beneath the earth. Sometimes you can even find fossils of fish, sea turtles, or traces of creatures we associate only with the deep ocean. Yet they all lived right here, where you now imagine an endless golden desert. There are also reverse rivers that flow from distant mountains into the heart of the Sahara, but not on the surface. They seep underground through cracks and ancient sediments, slow as the breath of stone, supplying cool water to oases beneath 50 degrees Celsius noon heat. Those flows accumulated when ice ages still gripped parts of Earth, a time too distant for humans to imagine. If you pressed your ear to the ground, you would hear nothing. But seismographs reveal that in some places water still moves beneath the sand, not fast, not strong, but enough to sustain life. Among all these wonders, one stands out: the outlines of ancient lakes still etched into the Sahara. Megachad, once so vast it covered an area 7 times the size of Vietnam, has shrunk to the small Lake Chad we know today. Yet from satellite, its ancient shoreline is unmistakable, like the footprint of a titan. Megachad was home to giant fish, a place where ancient people fished from boats, where herds drank from endless shores. Then, as Earth's tilt changed, the megalake shrank, fragmented, dwindled, and vanished. But it left vast, fertile sediments, curved lake beds, and traces that make the Sahara look like a giant map of memory. When you stand where Megachad's shore once lay, the surface feels hauntingly flat, as though the water withdrew only yesterday. Thus, the Sahara is not merely a desert, it is a museum of water, a museum of vanished rivers, disappeared lakes, oceans evaporated by time. And if you know how to look, you will see that the Sahara does not tell just one story, but dozens interwoven. Water comes and goes, seas rise and fall, rivers flow and sink underground, oases are born and die. Every cycle leaves its mark on sand, stone, and even the sky, where winds carry the souls of the past. In the evening, when the wind softens, you can watch the moon reflected in small oasis pools. Though the water is scarce, seeing moonlight tremble on its surface amid endless dunes is an experience that stills the soul. You feel as though the water is speaking, "I am still here, I have only changed form." And when you think about that, you understand the Sahara is not dry to its very core. It is merely sleeping beneath its golden blanket of sand. Those waters, whether silent or radiant, are traces of an ancient green Sahara. The more you know, the less barren and cold the desert becomes. It is like someone quiet, yet holding memories so deep you must listen for a very long time to understand them all. But these waters are only the first layer of the secrets beneath the Sahara, because beneath the sand lie the bones of colossal creatures. Buried cities, people who lived and vanished, meteorites fallen like pieces of the cosmos. Water is only the opening chapter, and as you step deeper into this world, the Sahara begins to reveal the secrets that lie beyond water. Those secrets await you in Chapter 4, where strange creatures, giant fossils, and traces of ancient life begin to rise from the darkness of time. Among dunes that seem endless, where one imagines only wind, sun, and silence, there once existed a completely different world, an empire that knew how to bend its fate against the desert. If in the previous chapter you walked with hidden waters, mega lakes, and silent underground flows that sustain the Sahara, now step one layer deeper into the desert's memory, the memory of humanity. Not lost wanderers, not solitary caravans, but an entire people, the Garamantes, who dared to build a kingdom in the heart of what the world called uninhabitable. Imagine a night far in the past. The Sahara sky, velvet black, strewn with stars, the Milky Way a silver river across the darkness. Amid the sea of sand, instead of nameless darkness, there flickered the glow of torches, small campfires, homes built of sandstone, packed earth roads, voices, livestock, the sound of stone being worked, the faint trickle of water drawn from deep underground by pulleys. It was no illusion. It was the Garamantes, people who refused to flee the Sahara and instead made it their domain. Unlike tribes that constantly moved with the rains, the Garamantes chose to stay. They looked at the desert and saw not only sand but the hidden water far below. They understood, if the surface is cruel, go deeper. If the sky withholds rain, learn to unlock the earth's hidden reservoirs. They were engineers of an underground civilization. Their kingdom existed not only on the sand, but extended into cool, dark tunnels, like the arteries of a giant body. The Garamantes dug vertical wells dozens of meters deep, but they did not stop there. They connected the wells with gently sloping tunnels so that groundwater from higher areas could flow silently by gravity to fields, homes, and gardens. This system was called foggara, underground channels that, seen from above, appear as perfectly spaced rows of circular holes, like mysterious stitches sewn into the desert. Each hole was a well shaft, each shaft an access point to the vast underground network. Imagine walking across burning sand, your back scorched by the sun, every step sounding like walking on ash. Suddenly ahead lies a line of hundreds, thousands of small, round pits stretching to the horizon. The surface is silent, but descend one of those pits, climb down the earthen walls, and you enter another world, cooler, damper, with the sound of water seeping through stone, drop by drop, trickle by trickle, gathering into a quiet flow. That was how the Garamantes brought water to turn this harsh land into fields, gardens, vineyards, olive groves, and sustenance for tens of thousands. They did not merely survive with foggara, they thrived. In the heart of the Sahara, the Garamantes built permanent settlements, multi-level sandstone homes, wind-breaking walls, vast cemeteries with rows of tombs beneath the moon. They had villages, towns, a capital. They grew barley, ground grain on stone querns worn smooth by generations. Even today, if you pick up a random stone from their ruins, you might be holding part of a millstone around which countless families once stood, grinding wheat in the pale dawn light. The Garamantes did not stay rooted in place only. They became the middlemen of trans-Saharan trade. From the north came caravans carrying wine, oil, pottery, cloth. From the south came salt, gold, ivory, slaves. The Garamantes stood in the center, masters of the oases, toll collectors, bridges between two different worlds. Their kingdom did not rely on rivers or seas, but on their ability to control underground water and the vital stopping points across the sea of sand. If you imagine their map, the Garamantes appear as small green dots connected by dotted camel routes. Each green dot was an oasis irrigated by foggara. From above, those tiny points formed a living network, pulsing steadily amid the rigid dryness of the Sahara. Their empire was not dazzling like Rome with its marble, nor famous like Egypt with its pyramids, but it embodied a profound question. How far can humanity go when forced to live in a world not made for them? When you walk among the ruins of a Garamante city, if you can find the way, you will see brown earthen roads, half-collapsed walls, stairways leading nowhere. Wind blows sand into rooms, drawing new patterns on the walls. But look closely, and you will see how people once lived. Where marks on stone surfaces, precisely cut sandstone blocks, foundations deliberately placed to avoid or catch certain winds. All of it shows they did not merely camp in the desert, they chose to stay for generations. Long ago, when night fell, the Garamantes likely sat around fires, gazing at the sky and telling stories of underground water as sacred legend. Perhaps they taught their children to listen to the earth, to know if the Foghara still held enough flow. Perhaps on utterly still nights, when the wind stopped, you could hear water moving faintly many meters beneath the sand. To them, that was the most beautiful sound, because it was the sound of life. But the Sahara never stands still. The desert is a slow but relentless being. It does not attack once and finish. It only needs time. Year after year, decade after decade, century after century, the climate continued to change. Rain grew scarcer, hot winds stronger. The groundwater the Garamantes depended on sank deeper. Foghara that once fed entire fields now yielded only drops. Wells dug long ago no longer reached the water table. It was as if they stood on a ladder from which rungs were slowly removed each year. To adapt, they dug deeper, extended tunnels, lengthened Foghara, searched for new sources. They expanded territory toward remaining water. They poured labor, human strength, and time into chasing something slowly retreating, ancient water stored since distant ice ages. But what formed over tens of thousands of years could not be preserved forever by a few centuries of effort. Aquifers have limits. Gradually, once damp tunnels dried. Some wells collapsed, others filled with sand. Many Foghara were abandoned, silent like veins no longer carrying blood. While resources dwindled below, sand kept moving above. Dunes do not stay put. Wind drags them forward, lifting grains, depositing them, slowly burying walls, roofs, courtyards, wells. At first, just a thin layer at the doorstep. Then one day the lower half of a wall vanished, only the upper half protruding. Eventually, entire streets became golden ridges. Only the tips of walls or jagged house corners remained like stone teeth rising from the dunes. There was no invading army, no clash of weapons, no cries, no enemy banners. The Garamantes Empire was erased far more quietly. The desert does not argue, does not blame, does not issue ultimatums. It simply, patiently covers with sand everything humanity built, like someone gently drawing a white sheet over an old painting. Perhaps in the final years, the last Garamantes looked at one another, realizing their fields no longer had enough water. Their herds were thinning, trade routes were bypassing them for better oases. Perhaps some clung on, hoping for kinder seasons. Perhaps families left one by one, heading north or south, melting into other peoples. And then one day the capital no longer had enough people to sustain life. If you imagine yourself as the last person to leave a Garamantes town, you would close the weathered wooden door, step down from the threshold, look one last time at streets that once bustled. You would hear the wind whistling through cracks like whispers of the ancients, and know that long after you walked away, no one would remember people ever lived here. From that moment, the sand began its final work, covering everything. Yet history was not lost. It merely descended one layer deeper. Today, when archaeologists dig in southern Libya, they find Garamantes remains. Broken sandstone walls, deep empty wells, abandoned Foghara tunnels, and human and animal bones mixed in dry earth. They piece together broken pottery, measure well depths, map tunnels, and slowly, from what remains, an image emerges. The image of an empire that dared to exist in the heart of the desert through intelligence and resilience. The strangest thing is that if you stand beside a collapsed Garamantes well and peer into the darkness, you feel something familiar. It is the feeling of looking at a stopped old clock. All the mechanisms once worked perfectly, but then external conditions changed and the hands froze. The Garamantes were like a machine that ran out of fuel. It was not that they were wrong, only that the resource they relied on was too ancient to be used forever. Still, their legacy is not only in ruins. The Foghara system, known as Kanat in other regions, was adapted by many civilizations around the world's arid belt. Variations are still used in Iran, North Africa, the Middle East. The principle of gently sloping tunnels that move water by gravity rather than pumps remains a subtle lesson in living with the environment rather than imposing upon it. From satellite today, you can see the faint dots of ancient wells and foggara like needle marks on the aged body of the desert. To the unaware, they are meaningless specks. But to those who know, each dot is a story. Here, someone once stood, lowered a bucket, drew water, irrigated fields, cooked meals, drank, washed, laughed, cried, loved, fought. Every dry well is where a family once called home. From the perspective of the cosmos, the disappearance of the Garamantes is merely a tiny beat. A few centuries of existence, then dissolution, compared to millions of years of desert shift. But for humanity, their story is a gentle yet profound reminder. Some civilizations do not die in war or plague, but slowly fade because the environment around them changed too much. They were not defeated by enemies, but by a silent partner called climate. At night, when you listen to this tale through headphones, lying in bed far from the Sahara, you may feel something strange. The Garamantes somehow never truly vanished. They became part of the sand. The sand became part of the wind. The wind carries Sahara dust across oceans to Europe, South America, settling into soil, feeding plants, entering our food, our breath. In a very quiet way, grains that once lay over Garamantes cities may now be part of the world you live in. History, like groundwater, never completely disappears. It only changes place, changes state, hides in another layer, waiting for someone patient enough to seek it. And once you have walked with the Garamantes through the haze of time, you will begin to see the Sahara with different eyes. No longer an empty expanse, but a library buried in sand. Every layer of sand is a page, every ruin a surviving line of text. The Garamantes are only one of the stories written there, a story of a people who pushed human possibility to its limit to live where living seemed impossible. But the Sahara did not bury only one empire. It also hides the colossal skeletons of creatures that once roamed here, ancient whales beneath old seabeds, swimming dinosaurs, giant crocodiles, fossils that seem to belong to another planet. Where the Garamantes once dug wells, dig just a little deeper and you may enter a graveyard of a different era where humanity was not the ruler. Those stories await you in deeper layers of sand, where the worlds of humans and ancient beasts touch in silence. And as we continue walking with the Sahara, the curtain of sand will open to stranger and stranger tales, as though this desert is not merely a place on Earth, but a gateway to the deepest memory vault of the planet. If you stand atop a high dune, where the wind sings long ancient notes like breaths from the past, you will realize the Sahara was never the void people imagine. The emptiness you see is only the surface, a pale golden mask covering far deeper stories. Every grain of sand, every rock outcrop, every exposed slab of sandstone seems to guard something. And if you possess the stillness and patience of someone walking through a dream, you will notice strange shapes, structures not made by nature nor by modern humans. They are echoes of a different world, an era when the Sahara was not desert, but a place where humans and nature lived in harmony in ways modern science has yet to fully explain. Archaeologists have discovered tens of thousands of stone structures scattered across the Sahara. At first glance, they seem simple. Stone circles, aligned rows, long arrow-like lines. But from the air, they reveal a vast network. Straight lines like needle tracks stretch to the horizon, funnel-shaped triangles, circles larger than stadiums. They do not resemble dwellings, tombs, or temples as we know them. They feel like an ancient language, a map, signal, or ritual left by the ancients for each other and for us today. One of the Sahara's greatest mysteries is the desert kites. The modern name hardly captures their scale. From the ground you see only two long stone walls a few meters apart. From the sky, the entire structure appears as a funnel several kilometers long, wide at one end and narrowing to a point. The wide mouth could guide entire herds of large animals. The narrow end leads to a pit or small stone enclosure. The ancients used them as hunting tools. Hunters would create noise to startle animals, which would run toward the apparent escape of the open mouth, only to be funneled into the trap. Desert kites were not simple tools. They were the result of collective genius. Hundreds of people moving stones by hand, aligning walls kilometers long in an age without wheels, blueprints, or compasses. Today, archaeologists wonder, how did prehistoric people measure such vast distances? What methods kept their lines perfectly straight? Why does the same design appear in deserts thousands of kilometers apart? No one knows. The hands that placed those stones dissolved into sand long ago, and their thoughts drifted away with the wind. Desert kites are only the beginning. The Sahara is littered with countless other mysterious stone structures, too many even for seasoned researchers to fully classify. There are circles that resemble astronomical observatories. Standing stones form gateways like miniature Stonehenges, repeated at hundreds of sites. Some pillars nearly 2 meters tall have stood silently for 6,000 years, their purpose unknown. They are not graves, boundary markers, temples, or hunting camps. They simply exist, solitary ancient witnesses gazing calmly at the modern world. Elsewhere, rows of stones stretch hundreds of meters, sometimes multiple parallel lines. Some archaeologists believe they relate to rituals or migration routes from the Green Sahara period. Others call them horizontal pyramids for their ceremonial symmetry reminiscent of ancient Egypt. Measurements of their angles against sunrise and sunset reveal strange alignments, as though their builders observed celestial movements for generations. Notably, none of these structures come with writing, no inscriptions, no carvings explaining their purpose, no texts. They are questions without answerers. We can only guess from their shape, location, and nearby bones or pottery. Every hypothesis is partly right, partly wrong, as though the Sahara itself is testing how patient modern knowledge can be. In the Hoggar, Tassili Naja, northern Chad, or eastern Niger, you encounter stone fields, vast areas where large flat stones were arranged in long, level rows, as if preparing foundations for massive constructions. Yet nothing was ever built atop them. Some believe they were ritual grounds, others think they were bases for lost settlements. Still others suggest they were platforms for observing the sky, tracking shadows across long days. Whatever their purpose, the ancients invested immense effort and time. Then there are sites that make both archaeologists and astronomers pause, enormous stone circles some dozens of meters across. When plotted against seasonal solar orbits, some align perfectly with solstice and equinox points, days marking changes in Earth's light. This raises a fascinating question. Did prehistoric people possess advanced astronomical knowledge? The answer remains unclear, but imagine living in the open Sahara with no buildings, no electric lights, no light pollution. The night sky would have been overwhelming. Someone living under those conditions for years could easily detect tiny celestial changes. Those stone circles may simply mark long-term observation. Not only large structures confuse us, small details are equally strange. Polished stone slabs resemble food preparation surfaces, yet show no traces of fire or cooking tools. Elsewhere, rows of small round pits were laboriously carved into hard rock. No one knows why. Some form stars, others waves. Many are abstract. Rock art depicts animals long extinct, giant giraffes, buffalo, elephants, hippos, all real when the Sahara was green. Each carving is a diary page etched in stone. Standing before those paintings, you feel something special. Not modern mystery, but intimacy with the ancients. You see them carve a giraffe with its neck reaching for the sky. You see scenes of swimming, absurd in today's desert. But thousands of years ago, it was real. Lakes deep enough for swimming existed here. This is not fantasy. It is history carved in stone. As you walk beneath scorching sun, watching those paintings darken in the shadow of rock overhangs, you realize time does not erase everything. It only changes the scenery. The traces people left remain, still trying to speak to us in a language without words. One of the Sahara's wonders is that each time a layer of sand shifts, something new appears. Sometimes an ancient riverbed, sometimes a stone tool, sometimes a tomb. Sometimes a stone deliberately placed long ago by hands now gone. No place on Earth has wind acting as such a patient archaeologist. It covers, it uncovers, it covers again, creating a cycle where every revelation returns a secret from deep time to light. That is why the Sahara is called a living museum. You can never predict what it will reveal tomorrow. A buried kingdom, a giant animal skeleton, a nomad stone blade, or a structure we cannot classify? Each discovery opens three new mysteries, as though the desert is playing with human curiosity. Standing before those inexplicable stone structures feels like touching an era modern science can only describe in fragments. You see clearly that people once lived, hunted, built, watched the sky, recorded their lives on rock, created works that leave posterity silent in thought. But you also sense a vast gap between what they left and what we can understand. Perhaps the ancients did not build these to send messages to us. Perhaps they merely marked rituals, organized hunts, or created mental maps of their land. But over time, those maps became riddles. What was ordinary to them became mystery to us. The archaeological mysteries of the Sahara are not questions demanding answers. They are whispers from the past, enough to spark imagination, enough to suggest, but never telling all. And as night deepens around this narration, as you listen almost drifting into sleep, those ancient stoneworks may resemble faint glowing memories in the planet's mind, marks of time you have just glimpsed, yet also watched slip away like grains falling from your hand. And as you continue the journey through the Sahara, the deeper you go, the more you realize that not only human works create mystery here. Beneath the golden sand lies another world, the world of extinct creatures, colossal skeletons, monsters that ruled this land when the Sahara was still sea. And as you leave the enigmatic stone pillars and circles whose full meaning no one knows, you step deeper into the memory beneath your feet. There, beneath the sand, are not only footprints of ancient humans, but the giant bones of creatures that lived long before people appeared. The Sahara is not only a museum of lost civilizations, it is a silent graveyard of eras we can only touch through fossils and imagination. Try to picture this. Long, long before the first nomads led camels across this land, before stone circles and desert kites were built, the Sahara was utterly different. No endless dunes, no skin-searing wind. Instead, there were wetlands, green plains, roaring rivers, swamps, vast lakes, dense riverside forests. Across that landscape moved colossal creatures, unaware that one day their bones would become clues for modern humans to reconstruct a vanished world. Where today there is only sand and stone, there once prowled a predator with a name as sharp as its teeth, Carcharodontosaurus, up to 13 meters long, heavier than a truck, with a massive head and saw-like teeth. In the shade of ancient riverside forests, each step probably made the ground tremble slightly. We no longer hear its roar, but fossil teeth and vertebrae the size of boulders still lie somewhere in old sediments, punctuation marks of a story never fully told. On the same land lived an even stranger creature, Spinosaurus, the sail-backed dinosaur. A bony sail over 2 meters high rose from its back, likely covered in skin and blood vessels, standing like a living flag. Unlike its land-hunting cousins, Spinosaurus loved water. Broad, flat feet, a long tail, a long crocodile-like snout filled not with slicing teeth but conical ones perfect for catching slippery fish. Today, fossils found in the Sahara reveal a dinosaur that swam, chasing fish in ancient rivers, half crocodile, half dinosaur. In your imagination, let the scene unfold slowly. A distant afternoon, humid air heavy with mud and rotting leaves, the surface of an ancient river rippling under thin mist, dark tree canopies above. From beneath the water, a gigantic shadow glides upward, its sail cutting through the light like a black blade. That was Spinosaurus, silently stalking prey. We no longer hear the splash or its breath, but the spinal bones found in stone today allow us to piece together that shadow, like reassembling Earth's ancient dream. Not only predators, the ancient Sahara was also home to gentle giants, sauropods weighing dozens of tons. Imagine bodies as long as train carriages, necks reaching high to browse the tallest trees, tails sweeping the ground. When herds moved, the earth probably rippled like waves. Their footprints, filled with mud, hardened, were buried and turned to stone. In places, entire tracks of fossil footprints remain, each print the size of a small pond, lined up as though the herd passed only yesterday. In truth, those steps were taken tens of millions of years ago. Beside dinosaurs, other giant reptiles ruled. Crocodiles 10 meters long, bodies like buses with long curved teeth lurked in ancient river-lake systems. In the silence of a prehistoric afternoon, beneath murky water, they lay motionless like boulders, only eyes above the surface, waiting for prey to approach. When the moment came, the massive body lunged, creating waves of mud, dragging the victim under in swirling chaos. Near the banks, on protruding mudflats, giant turtles might have basked, their shells the size of boulders, covered in moss, looking like part of the landscape. Those creatures had no idea that millions of years later, humans would dig up their shells, place them in museums, and call them evidence of a lost ecosystem. All of that scene, forest, river, mud, ancient insects, dinosaur and reptile cries, has passed. What remains are fragments of hardened bone transformed by minerals. Calcium in bones replaced by stone from groundwater, turning living tissue into rock, ivory white becoming brown, grey, or blood-red stone. For tens of millions of years, those fragments lay deep, layer upon layer of sediment covering them. Then, one day, wind and water eroded the surface, exposing a small piece, a vertebra, a tooth, a jaw fragment. Paleontologists arrive, kneel, gently brush away the dust, and an entire silent era slowly reappears. To them, the modern Sahara is not merely desert, it is an archive of epochs that textbooks mention in only a few lines. Each time a few Spinosaurus vertebrae, a sauropod thigh bone, or an ancient crocodile skull is unearthed, another piece is added to the picture of the Green Sahara. They date the surrounding rock with radioactivity, compare bone structure to samples found elsewhere, and reconstruct the creature's shape, diet, hunting methods, movement. In quiet museum rooms, they use 3D models and calculations, but the root of every conclusion remains rough stones lifted from sand. It is fascinating to think that where today people worry about drought, encroaching dunes, and desertification, there once existed a paradise for giant creatures. Water was so abundant that predators lived aquatic lives. Trees grew so tall that plant eaters needed long necks to reach the leaves. The air was hot but humid, filled with spores, pollen, the scent of wet earth. Those things now remain only as thin sediment layers, ancient pollen trapped in stone, mineral bands recording water levels that rose and fell. When you close your eyes and imagine, you may see a Spinosaurus swimming along an ancient river, a distant sauropod slowly browsing leaves, while a giant crocodile lies motionless at the water's edge. Above, a deep blue sky with no trace of humanity, no houses, no roads, no power lines, only wind through treetops, flowing water, heavy footsteps, and distant calls of ancient birds. Then time passed. Tectonic plates shifted, climates changed, shallow seas appeared and retreated, mountains rose, rivers changed course. Those colossal creatures vanished in waves of extinction, some from asteroids, some from prolonged climate change. They did not know they were going extinct. They simply ceased to be. But their bones remained, mixed with stone, lying silent in the earth's darkness, waiting for someone to stumble upon them and realize the rock they just kicked was no ordinary rock. Skeletons dozens of meters long have been found this way in the Sahara. In places, spinal columns longer than a two-story house remain connected, as though the animal lay down only yesterday. Jaws still hold full sets of teeth. Spinosaurus sails retain their shape. Each time such a fossil is lifted from the sand, it is as though another page is opened in Earth's endless ancient book. People often say, the desert is a place where nothing can live. But looking deep into time reveals the opposite. The Sahara was once home to too much life. Too many trees, too much water, too many creatures. The desert is merely one phase, one current expression of a land that has changed form countless times. Today it is dry and hot, once it was green and wet. Tomorrow, in tens or hundreds of thousands of years, it may change again. At night, as you lie listening to these stories, the everyday world, bills, emails, messages, meetings, fades. In its place come distant scenes. A dinosaur slowly walking through mud, an ancient crocodile gliding through a swamp, a herd of sauropods moving beneath an ancient moon. These images are not meant for you to memorize scientific names or measurements. They are like planetary dreams, fragments of memory showing us that Earth is never fixed, as we often believe. When you walk across the Sahara today, your feet sinking into hot sand, it is very possible that just a few meters or tens of meters below lies a sleeping giant skeleton. You simply cannot see it. You cannot hear its story. But science, with hammers, brushes, microscopes, and scanners, has found a way to open that dialogue. Each fossil is an answer, but also a new question. What was the climate like then? What did it eat? How did it die? Did it live in herds or alone? And most importantly, what caused its world to vanish, making way for different ecosystems? You may feel a gentle calm in contemplating those questions, because they remind you that everything changes. Not only distant lands, but each person's private life. There are loud, turbulent phases like a dinosaur forest. There are quiet phases like a desert. But even that quiet carries traces of past noise, experiences, memories once as vivid as the roar of Carcharodontosaurus or the splash of Spinosaurus's tail. The Sahara, with its giant bones beneath the sand, is like a mirror showing us the depth of time. It does not only tell of Earth's past, it whispers of the impermanence of all things. Forests can become deserts. Deserts may one day become forests again. The largest creatures can vanish, making way for smaller but more sophisticated ones. Nothing stands still. Nothing is forever as it is. And as you let your mind drift through those layers of time, from the present back to buried empires, then deeper still to the age of dinosaurs beside ancient rivers, you will see an endless connected thread. A thread where each segment is a different scene, a different form of life, a different story. You are simply walking slowly, following the traces that remain, like turning the thick pages of a book whose ink has faded but whose words have not completely vanished. Beneath those dinosaur bones, deeper still, lies another story. The story of when the Sahara lay beneath the sea, when whales, giant sharks, and strange marine creatures swam. Not Spinosaurus, but the first whales, ancient oceans that dried, leaving salt, shells, and tails still waiting to be awakened. If you listen very slowly, very deeply, amid the seemingly absolute stillness of the Sahara, you will discover that this desert is never completely silent. Beneath the burning sand, in the rare shade of small, thorny bushes, and under a night sky deep as an abyss, tiny hearts still beat, quiet footsteps still move, eyes still reflect moonlight. As though, despite time eroding everything, some creatures stubbornly preserve the final pulse of an ancient world, living memories that refuse to fade. The Sahara today is no longer the green paradise of dinosaurs or the lush forests of the Megachad era. Yet it remains home to beings that have learned to live with scorching heat, scarce water, knife-like sand-laden winds, and temperatures that swing from 50 degrees Celsius by day to 5 degrees Celsius at night. These creatures do not merely survive, they have adapted to perfection. Each species is a strategy, a lesson in resilience and creativity taught by nature over millions of years. If you walk very slowly at dusk, when the sand has cooled, you may see a small creature emerge from the darkness, the fennec fox. Its ears, nearly half its body size, can hear an insect moving beneath the sand. Those ears are also perfect radiators, helping it regulate temperature in days so hot stone cracks. The fennec is so light it almost glides across sand, leaving barely a trace. In moonlight, its tiny form moves like a breeze, soft, weightless, almost untouched by the ground. It lives on almost nothing: insects, roots, sometimes just a few drops of dew on stone. And in that humility lies a strange beauty, the beauty of complete adaptation. When you watch a fennec, you see a quintessential Sahara story. Small creatures often outlast giants. The age of monsters has ended, but light, clever, patient beings remain, like dying embers preserving the last warmth of life. Deeper into the Sahara's web of life, you meet another creature known by countless names, the camel. The Berber call it the one who endures. Arabs call it the ship of the desert. To the Tuareg, it is a measure of wealth, a companion, a symbol of freedom across golden sands. To science, the camel is one of evolution's masterpieces. A camel can go 10 days without drinking, not because it stores water in its hump, a common myth, but because the hump holds fat, an extremely dense energy source. Instead of using water to cool itself, the camel lets its body temperature rise during the day and drop low at night, almost merging with the desert's rhythm rather than fighting it. Its eyelashes are long curtains against blowing sand. Its nostrils can close like tiny gates. Its broad, soft feet are like meat snowshoes that prevent sinking. In the worst sandstorms, a camel stands steady, eyes half closed, head lowered, like a sage meditating in scorching wind. The Tuareg, true children of the Sahara, understand this better than anyone. To them, the camel is not just an animal, it is the chance to live. If you have ever watched a caravan cross the Tenere at dawn, you have seen the long shadows of camels stretching across the horizon, moving in silent single file, only the soft hiss of sand beneath their feet. They create a distinctive sound, low, steady, like the desert's own breathing. Many travelers say that simply hearing that rhythm brings a stillness deeper than meditation. But not all creatures are as slow and gentle as camels. One of the Sahara's most impressive inhabitants is the silver ant, perhaps the fastest animal in the world relative to its size. During the hottest hours, when sand exceeds 60 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cook flesh in seconds, they burst from their burrows and sprint at speeds approaching a meter per second. For their tiny size, that is equivalent to a human running 700 kilometers per hour. Their entire above-ground life lasts only minutes each day, precisely when no other creature can bear the heat. They scavenge dead insects killed by the sun, then race back underground before being roasted. In the cold logic of evolution, silver ants teach perfect timing. The desert offers few chances. The only way to live is to seize the few seconds when the rest of the world is exhausted. If you sit still beside a dune, you may see zigzag lines drawn across the sand. These are the tracks of the sidewinder snake. Unlike ordinary snakes that slither straight, sidewinders move sideways in S-shaped loops, touching the sand at only 2 points per cycle. This keeps most of their body off the burning surface, while allowing fast, almost silent movement. It is a motion both beautiful and refined, like a dance across the dunes. People say that if you are quiet long enough, you can watch a sidewinder glide across a dune like a whisper, arriving and departing, leaving only graceful curves before vanishing. Among the Sahara's strange creatures, we cannot forget the fog-basking beetle. Each morning, when faint, moisture-laden winds blow in from distant oceans, the beetle climbs to the top of a dune, raises its body, tilts its head, and unfolds its wing cases. The surface of its wings has a special texture, tiny hydrophilic bumps that attract water and hydrophobic troughs that channel it. when microscopic moisture in the air condenses on the wings, droplets form and roll straight into the beetle's mouth. Thus, by simply standing still for a few minutes each dawn, this tiny beetle drinks enough water to survive another day in a place that seems to hold none. The sophistication of that adaptation leaves many scientists speechless. A minuscule creature in the driest place on Earth learned to harvest water from thin air. That is not merely survival, it is nature's wisdom. And when night falls, the Sahara becomes the domain of shadow hunters. One of the most impressive is the desert owl. Its broad wings fly almost soundlessly, not because they are light, but because the feathers have a saw-like leading edge that scatters sound waves. This allows it to dive on prey without the victim detecting any noise. A desert owl at night is like a passing shadow. It may glide right over you without you ever knowing. If you happen to look up and catch its golden eyes in the dark, you will feel the pure stillness of a creature that lives in silence to survive. The remaining creatures, two-legged running lizards, jumping mice, tiny birds, rare Dorcas gazelles, all carry their own survival strategies. Some sleep all day and emerge only when cool. Some burrow over 2 meters deep to escape heat. Some live on a few drops of plant sap. Others drink blood from prey. Some survive by slowness, others by speed. But they all share one thing. Every day they live is a victory. And if you watch the Sahara long enough, you will understand something profound. The harsher the environment, the more tenacious life becomes. Those tiny beings do not complain about the heat, worry about tomorrow, or resent their circumstances. They simply live, guided by millions of years of evolution. And in that endurance lies a peaceful beauty, a gentle reminder that even the most deadly-looking place is full of life. The Sahara is not soulless. Life here has simply been reduced to tiny, persistent, hidden sparks beneath sand, shade, and night. They are the last survivors of a land that once rang with sound, water, and green. Like the final notes after a long symphony, they keep the Sahara from ever becoming truly empty. And as you leave the world of present animals and walk deeper into the desert, you realize that not only ancient creatures and modern wildlife tell the Sahara's story. The wind itself, the sand, the light, all whisper of even longer journeys. The next chapter will take you to a very different part of the Sahara, where nomads, ancient tribes, and vanished civilizations once passed, leaving nameless stories waiting for you to listen. If you pause on a blazing, golden afternoon in the Sahara, where sand stretches like a sea and wind whistles through grains like distant strings, you may see a caravan of camel riders appear on the horizon. They approach slowly but surely, each step carrying the desert's own heartbeat. These are not ordinary travelers. They are the Tuareg, the people the Sahara addresses in its most intimate voice, like calling its own children. The Tuareg call themselves Kel Tamashek, those who speak the Tamashek language. But the name carries deeper meaning, the free ones. Not freedom in a Western political or philosophical sense. Freedom like breath. Freedom like the clear dawn air rising beyond the dunes. Freedom like walking the desert, never fearing being lost. Freedom like feeling the entire boundless sky is home and the endless golden sand the great bed of ancestors. In the first seconds of seeing them, you may notice only the indigo blue, the color of the men's tagelmust veils wound around their faces, the long cloths that protect from sun and sandstorms. The Tuareg are called the Blue Warriors because the indigo dye often stains their skin. But look closer and you will see more. Eyes sharp as Takuba swords, the upright yet relaxed posture of riding camels, and a bearing only those who have lived with harsh nature for thousands of years possess. The Tuareg live as their ancestors did, always moving between oases and grazing grounds. They know the Sahara's sand map, not on paper, but in memory and instinct. A seasoned Tuareg can read the wind direction and know where a sandstorm passed last night. They read dune shapes and sense underground water. They read camel tracks and know which caravan, which tribe, how long ago. To a Tuareg, sand is not an obstacle, it is a language. In Tuareg life, tea is the center of every gathering, But their tea ritual is unlike anywhere else. Mint tea is brewed over small charcoal fires and poured 3 times, each pour with meaning. The first is bitter as life, the second is sweet as love, the third is gentle as death. They pour from great height to create thick white foam. The more foam, the better the tea. In the evening firelight, as desert wind blows softly and stars fill the sky, the sound of pouring tea and crackling embers becomes the sound of home, family, reunion. To a traveler, being offered tea means you have been accepted. You are a guest, not an outsider. In that dim evening light, you will notice something unique. Tuareg men veil their faces, while women do not. This is the opposite of many Muslim cultures. For the Tuareg, the tagal must is not just protection from sand, it is a symbol of maturity and honor. Veiling is how men show modesty, restraint, and respect for the community. Tuareg women are strong, confident, and free to show their faces. They are the keepers of culture, language, music, and family. In ancient Tamashek songs, women are the storytellers, guardians of memory. They sing of long night caravans, of men crossing the sand sea to bring salt home, of lost rainy seasons, of the time when the Sahara was green. Their songs have slow, steady rhythms, like the breath of a camel walking on soft sand. But the Tuareg are not only poetry, they were warriors, true warriors. Their weapon, the takuba sword, is a symbol of power and identity. Traditional takuba are nearly 1 meter long, steel-bladed, leather-wrapped, exquisitely decorated. Today most are ceremonial, but they are still worn at the hip as a reminder of the era when the Tuareg controlled the greatest trade routes across the Sahara. No caravan passed without their consent. The blue warriors on swift camels could fight with spear, bow, and sword from camelback, launching sudden attacks that terrified ancient empires from Roman times to the 20th century. Yet what earns the Tuareg respect is not martial prowess, but their indomitable spirit of freedom. They do not recognize borders. To them, the Sahara is a home without walls, doors, or boundaries. They move with the wind, the seasons, the stars. Ask a Tuareg where their land is, and they will place a hand on their heart and say, "Here, wherever we find water and grass for our camels, there is home." That freedom shows in how they travel. No maps, no GPS, no compass. Everything lives in memory and experience. They read sand color to know wind direction. They read cracks in the ground to sense underground water. They know every major dune's shape like a family member's face. They know the paths of 12 key star constellations for night travel. A traveler with the Tuareg feels as though walking with a living compass. No roads, no signs, yet they never lose the way. That comes from hundreds of generations living with the desert, not fighting nature, but flowing with its rhythm. At a deeper level, the Tuareg carry a culture so rich it could enchant any scholar. Their language, Tamashek, is a Berber branch, written in Tifinagh, one of Earth's oldest scripts still in use. Tifinagh symbols look like constellations connected by lines, simple yet beautiful ancient geometry. Tuareg mothers often carve their children's names in Tifinagh on objects as protective blessings. Tuareg silver jewelry is famous. They consider silver the metal of the moon, pure, strong, protective. On pendants, rings, and bracelets, you always find triangles, crosses, stars, each with meaning tied to ancient gods, wind directions, or caravan routes. But above all cultural beauty, what sets the Tuareg apart is how they face the desert. To us, the Sahara is harsh, dangerous. To them, it is teacher. Heat teaches patience, wind teaches flexibility, sand teaches humility, endless distance teaches freedom. Every sandstorm is a test, but also a reminder that life exists only when we bow before nature. In evenings around the fire with Tuareg, you will hear them speak of Ashak, a profound code of honor, truth, hospitality, and respect. To them, giving water to a stranger is sacred duty, because in the Sahara, water is not just liquid, it is life, compassion, the thread binding human to human. A true Tuareg will share their last cup of tea, last drop of water, even their last patch of shade, to prove their honor can never be buried by sand. That is what makes them one of the most respected communities in North African history. When you travel a long stretch with them, you begin to understand things words cannot express. You see them pause, listening to the wind like hearing ancestral messages. You see them close their eyes to feel air moisture and guess if an oasis lies ahead. You see them touch the sand as if touching an old friend's skin. And then you realize their freedom is not about being unbound, but about knowing exactly where they belong. They belong to the desert, yet also to an indomitable spirit, to values deeper than any sandstorm, to songs that span generations. The Tuareg today no longer live exactly as before. The desert changes, the world changes, politics change, borders are drawn. But in the eyes of children riding camels among dunes, in the way a man pours tea high to create foam, in the sad, deep songs of women at night, something remains that can never be lost: the spirit of freedom. That is what has let them endure through every age, and what makes them legend amid the sea of sand. And as you leave the Blue Warriors, as you continue your journey through the Sahara, you will notice far ahead, beyond dunes soft as ocean waves, another story waiting. The story of ancient salt caravans crossing the Tenere, of guides, of camel footprints stretching like thin threads across the vastness. The next chapter will lead you into that very journey, the journey of salt caravans, the fragile roads humans have walked for thousands of years beneath the Sahara's merciless sun. If you stay long enough with the Tuareg, one morning when dawn slowly gilds the dunes in amber, you will see long shadows appear on the horizon, silent as drifting thoughts in a dream. At first, just tiny specks shimmering in early light, but the longer you watch, the clearer it becomes. These are not dunes or mirages, they are camels approaching. A salt caravan, the keepers of the Sahara's heartbeat, is crossing the Tenere as it has for over 1,000 years. Salt caravans are one of the desert's most enduring and profound images. Though eras have changed, borders drawn, pickup trucks now roar along dusty tracks, and young nomads carry mobile phones, the salt caravans continue. Like an old film endlessly replaying in the desert, never worn, never forgotten. An irreplaceable ritual, an unbreakable tradition, a movement of humanity in perfect rhythm with nature. The salt caravan, especially across the Tenere, is not merely trade. It is culture, history, memory, a rite of passage. In Tuareg society, a man is not considered fully adult until he has completed an entire salt caravan, 600 kilometers through the Tenere, where sand can burn flesh, where a half-hour sandstorm can make an entire caravan lose direction, where one small mistake can mean death. And in that harshness, the Tuareg find their essence, hearing ancestral voices, feeling the wind as generations before them did, understanding that life is most beautiful when earned through effort. The caravan begins at distant salt mines like Bilma or Fachi, where underground brine lakes are evaporated by sun, leaving slabs hard as stone. Each slab is chiseled into rectangles weighing 30 to 35 kilograms. A strong camel carries 4 to 6 slabs, nearly 200 kilograms. Day after day, men work beneath 50 degrees Celsius sun, lifting slabs onto camel backs, securing them with rope. Sweat dries the instant it forms. Eyes squint against blinding white light reflected from salt, like standing in an upside-down snowfield. A camel that knows the route needs almost no guidance. It remembers the path like breathing. It knows where water lies closer to the surface. It knows where wind spirals and must be avoided. In a caravan, camels are not mere transport. They are full members, with memory, instinct, experience, and value equal to the best guide. Many Tuaregs say a camel that has walked 20 caravans can find the way better than a first-time human. When the caravan moves, the first sound is not human voices. It is rope creaking against wooden saddles, salt slabs rubbing together, camels breathing slow and deep, and sand cascading from their wide feet. No noise, no shouting, no hurry. The caravan moves in silence, because in the desert, Silence is the only way to feel direction. Salt caravans travel 14 days across the Tenere, 14 days of only sand, wind, sun, and horizon. Each day they start before dawn. Morning is the kindest part, sand still cool, wind gentle. As the sun rises, temperature climbs minute by minute. The men wrap their tagelmust tight, leaving only eyes exposed. Camels lower their heads against direct glare. By noon, the ground is hot enough to bake bread on a metal sheet. But the caravan does not stop. Stopping is danger. Stopping is sickness. Stopping is the temptation of exhaustion. In this journey, movement is salvation. The Tuareg know the Tenere, most notorious part of the Sahara, is also called Land of Fear. Not because of wild beasts or bandits, but because its absolute silence can unsettle the mind. Wind blows for hours, sand hissing against ears in monotonous song, sometimes making people feel they hear whispers from another world. In low-lying areas, wind can erase all footprints in minutes. Without an experienced guide who reads wind, remembers dune shapes, distinguishes sand color by the hour, an entire caravan can be lost after a mild storm. Many caravans in history vanished this way. No one knows where they went or died. Only when wind shifts the sand do searchers sometimes find camel bones, scraps of rope, or a faded face veil. That is why the caravan is a rite of passage, not for physical strength, but for steadfastness, for the ability to listen, for the capacity to live in silence without fear. Yet when you travel with a caravan, you witness moments of beauty that lighten the heart. Mornings, sand soft as silk, cool wind brushing the veil, camels flowing across a golden sea. Afternoons, sunlight carving sharp edges on dune ridges. Evenings, the caravan stops, lights a small fire, brews mint tea, pours it 3 times with perfect foam beneath a sky full of stars. Despite exhaustion, despite sand in hair and clothes, people smile. The caravan teaches that laughter is a way to defy the desert. At night, camels lie in a protective circle, heads inward. The Tuaregs sleep in the center, wrapped in blankets, directly on the sand. No tents, no beds, no mosquito nets, only the Milky Way overhead, vast as a shining dream. One night in a caravan is a night you cannot find in any hotel on earth. No mechanical sounds, no electric light, only the soft crackle of fire, the steady breathing of camels, wind caressing dunes, and a sky of stars that makes you feel tiny yet cradled. The special thing is, the Tuareg do not see the caravan as commerce. To them, it is life's cycle. Salt from the Sahara is traded in distant oases for dates, wheat, tea, cloth. Salt feeds people, keeps camels strong, sustains communities. But deeper, the caravan is how they connect to ancestors. When a boy joins his first caravan, the elders do not lecture. They let him watch, let him learn from wind, sand, camel rhythm, the silence of the journey. When he completes the 600 kilometers across the Tenere without turning back, without shirking duty, he becomes a real man. Not because of muscle, but because of heart. The Tenere has forged him into steel of patience, courage, inner stillness. Salt caravans exist for a simple reason. The Tenere changes everything, but the caravan does not. The Tenere may change shape, dunes may shift form, national borders may be redrawn, but the caravan keeps its slow, steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of the Sahara. Seen from afar, a caravan is why people call it the eternal line of men. Hundreds of years ago, similar caravans walked the same direction. Hundreds of years from now, others will follow. The caravan has no clear beginning, no complete end. It is a flow of time, continuous, steadfast, unhurried. When you walk beside a caravan, you feel you're walking inside an ancient tale that is also happening today. In the Sahara, space and time are not separate as in cities. They blend, flow together, like winds carrying whispers of the past gently touching the present. And when the caravan fades behind the horizon, when the blue-clad Tuareg vanish beyond the dunes, you realize the Sahara is not only a desert of sand, wind, and silence. it is also a desert of memory. A desert where humans move like living stories, carrying tradition, honor, the strength of footprints pressed into sand for thousands of years. And as the caravan grows distant, your journey through the Sahara is not over. Ahead lie more secrets. Oases rising green from dead land, sandstorms shaped like moving mountains, days so hot the horizon bends like hot glass, nights so cold the stars seem sharper. The next chapter will take you into that very realm, the realm of surviving oases, where water appears like miracles, where life clings in silence like sparks that refuse to die in the endless darkness of the Sahara. When the salt caravan fades behind dunes soft as golden silk, you sense that the journey across the Sahara does not only happen on the ground. Every footstep, every subtle shift of sand, every heat wave rippling like thin mist is a tiny part of a far larger picture. A picture that only reveals itself when seen from above, from a distance almost beyond human imagination. And then, as a satellite passes over Africa, the Sahara appears entirely different, no longer a monotonous desert, but a colossal labyrinth of mysterious traces, inexplicable lines, forms that defy natural logic. From space, the Sahara is not a chaotic sea of sand. It looks like a giant blueprint, straight lines cut across the desert as if drawn by an engineer's ruler. Perfect rectangles appear amid golden sand. In places, parallel lines run dozens of kilometers, so straight they make one doubt nature could produce such precision. As though an invisible hand once laid a map here, a map not belonging to any known human era. Stone circles appear everywhere, some only a few meters across, others larger than stadiums. They lie solitary in the burning sand, perfect enough to feel deliberate. Countless archaeologists have knelt to examine each stone, trying to understand why they are so neatly placed, yet answers hang in the air like the Sahara's ever-shifting sand. When satellites probe deeper into geological structure, the Sahara reveals channels so long and straight they seem carved by a colossal tool. Some stretch over 20 kilometers, cutting through both dunes and ancient rock. They do not curve like wind erosion. They are not bent like water-worn gullies. They run arrow straight, precise enough to make one wonder, are these natural tectonic scars or remnants of something that existed before the desert formed? Some researchers favor geological explanations, cracks in Earth's crust. Others suggest traces of long-extinct rivers, but many channels have no relation to any known water flow. They lie in regions that never held water. They intersect at regular angles that baffle experts. Through the cold lens of satellite imagery, the Sahara resembles a giant circuit board, a place of structure humanity has yet to fully decipher. Farther south, strange colored patches appear vividly in satellite photos, not ordinary rock or mineral hues. Some are pale violet, others faded blue. Their edges are too sharp to be natural. Many scientists suspect deep mineral deposits reflecting radar oddly. Yet some wonder if these are echoes of lost works, structures erased from the surface, leaving only underground scars. And the story does not end there. As satellites scan farther, some features begin to resemble runways, too long, too straight, too regular. They look like modern airport runways, yet lie in areas with no human presence, no trace of settlement, no reason to exist. Some runways are 20 kilometers long, hundreds of meters wide, even grouped in parallel clusters like aviation layouts, but all lie in nothingness, places where no recorded civilization ever stood. Researchers suggest wind corridors, zones scoured deep by constant wind in one direction, but the absolute straightness makes that theory hard to accept. Nature excels at endless unique curves, but producing ruler straight lines dozens of kilometers long with no deviation almost defies the chaotic essence of climate. Giant rectangular stone blocks have also been found, some as large as buildings standing alone in dead land. Walls arranged with precision, like remnants of fortresses. Some structures resemble ancient moats, Others look like foundations of buildings whose upper parts were erased by sandstorms. Yet no man-made works are recorded in those areas. No population, no stable life, no civilization from written history ever developed there. All these layers overlap like endless questions, and the Sahara seems to smile silently at human confusion. What has most startled scientists are the colossal stone circles revealed by satellites, some clustered, some in spirals, others radiating from a center like a sun with stone rays. From the ground they appear as random, scattered rocks. From space they form deliberate designs, a kind of language in stone that modern humans cannot read. Similar ancient circles exist worldwide, like Stonehenge, but the Saharas are larger, more varied, and far more numerous. They stretch across Mauritania, Mali, Algeria, Libya, as though a mysterious network once connected those distant lands. One bold hypothesis suggests traces of ancient nomadic astronomers who marked key celestial points, but the perfection of the circles and precision of stone placement make that explanation incomplete. Other archaeologists propose ancient graves, yet many circles contain no remains. Some suggest ritual sites, others think celestial maps marking wind seasons or migration routes. Yet no theory has enough evidence to be conclusive. The Sahara remains silent. From space you also see colored sand bands curving like barcodes. These are traces of ancient rivers erased by time. But strangely, some rivers run across high plateaus where water could never flow. They meander yet retain unnaturally straight sections. Some ancient riverbeds are kilometers wide. Radar has detected sediments like real river bottoms within them. But if they were rivers, they should follow low ground. No one understands why some cross unsuitable terrain. And most mysteriously, many converge toward a central area that today holds nothing but flat sand. No lake, no wells, no aquifers, only desert. Yet from above it looks like an ancient water convergence point. Something that once existed, a megalake, a flooded plain, or the foundation of a land that modern geology cannot reconstruct. The question remains open. Rectangular shapes in the Sahara are another great mystery. In places, hundreds of small square stones lie in perfect grid patterns like a giant chessboard. Elsewhere, massive blocks the size of houses stand in straight lines. Some call these zones desert Lego because the structures are too angular to be natural. But if they are man-made, who built them? For what purpose? Under what conditions? When? There is no answer. Some independent researchers go further, proposing evidence of highly advanced prehistoric civilizations unrecorded by mainstream history. They point to the straight lines, artificial-looking forms, structures resembling walls and runways. Yet mainstream science does not accept this without direct proof of human presence at such remote dates. Still, satellites discover new structures every year. Each find is like a puzzle piece that does not yet fit the overall picture of Earth. From the ground, the Sahara is only sand and wind. From space, it resembles a colossal text written in code, a text no one has deciphered. What unsettles us most is not the strange shapes, but the feeling that far more lies beneath this sand than we ever imagined. Every straight line, every circle, every colored patch, every long channel carries a story the Sahara has not yet chosen to tell. It keeps them all beneath its red sand, revealing them through satellite lenses only as mysterious winks. And that makes us wonder, is something still buried deep beneath the sand and stone, waiting to be found? A city? A civilization? An unknown natural mechanism? Or merely a strange coincidence of geology, but too many coincidences to dismiss? The Sahara seems to want us to keep asking, to keep watching, to keep listening, because the secrets of this desert never appear at first glance. They reveal themselves slowly, layer by layer, the way wind blows sand for thousands of years to expose a single ancient stone. And beneath that sand, the Sahara's story continues to unfold, leading us to the next mysteries, places modern maps still leave blank. places where strange stone silhouettes rise, places where a single strong wind can reveal an entire lost world in just a few hours. When you look at the Sahara from above, at its ancient veins like gigantic threads of memory coiled beneath the sun, you realize this desert does not only speak of the past, it whispers of the future. What is happening here has happened many times in Earth's history and may be repeating on a cycle so vast that humans only glimpse tiny fragments. As the caravan disappears behind golden dunes, as wind sweeps the burning surface, leaving faint traces like writing on a giant page, you see that the Sahara does not stand still. It changes, it breathes, it moves like a living body. The truth is that desertification is spreading across the planet, not only in Africa, not only in far-flung places. It is happening in South America, where forests slowly dry after prolonged droughts, in Central Asia, where once vast lakes are now cracked earth, in the Middle East, where thousand-year-old date groves are losing water, and even in regions no one expected, where temperate climates are seeing strips of land heating, drying, losing vegetation in a slow, persistent way, like the patient winds of the Sahara. When forests are cleared, soil washes away, moisture in the air decreases, and the atmosphere warms year by year, places that were once lush can become miniature Saharas. Not just from lack of rain, but from loss of plant cover. Trees hold soil, soil holds moisture, moisture feeds clouds, clouds make rain. When the first link in that chain breaks, the entire system weakens. Fertile land can lose its ability to retain water in just a few years. Then topsoil blows away, leaving pale subsoil, sand, bare rock. Everything starts over, drier. But the Sahara is not only an example of loss, it is also a great lesson in planetary transformation. This desert was once green, home to elephants, hippos, antelopes, crocodiles, prehistoric humans, tribes that lived by hunting and gathering. Great rivers flowed here. Mega lakes reflected the sky like endless green mirrors, and only because of a slight shift in Earth's orbit, monsoons moved, rain relocated, and that green land became the sea of sand we see today. This shows that change is the essence of the planet. Nothing is permanent. Nothing stands still. Nature moves endlessly, in cycles so long humans can barely perceive them fully. The important thing to understand is that desert is not the end. It is a phase, a state, a step in the long journey of ecosystems. The Sahara has been dry, then green, then dry again. Fossil layers show many periods when it bloomed, then withered, then revived, like an ancient garden. All of it reflects the planet's breathing. In the modern context, humans can accelerate desertification through deforestation, overgrazing, unsustainable farming, and water use. But humans can also slow it, or even reverse local desertification. Many places around the world have proven this. When land is protected, when the right trees are replanted, when water is used wisely, when ecosystems are restored to their original structure, nature can revive more powerfully than we imagine. Regions that were once only dust and cracked earth have, after 20 years of effort, become forests again. Not primary forests, but forests that can create rain, hold water, restart the cycle. The Sahara has that potential too. Not in the sense of planting trees across the entire desert, but in the sense that it has its own natural cycle. Many climate models show that in about 10,000 years, the Sahara may turn green again. Scientists call it the Green Sahara cycle. When Earth's orbit shifts slightly, the tilt changes a few degrees, solar radiation patterns alter, monsoons may move north, rain may return, grasslands may grow once more. From space, we already see signs in places where seedlings sprout after rare rains, as though nature still remembers what the Sahara once was. Not everything is caused by humans. Much of the change belongs to the laws governing the planet, where every state is temporary. What matters to remember is that Earth is always moving, always transforming in ways no individual, no civilization can resist. We humans are only temporary guests. We walk into a very small slice of geological history, live in it for a few decades, then leave before fully understanding the deep rhythms of the planet. This does not make our existence less important, it makes us more humble. We are just one tiny piece in an endless symphony of time. The Sahara teaches us that adaptation is inevitable. The bones of ancient animals beneath the sand tell us life does not disappear. It changes form. It shifts from forest to grassland, grassland to desert, and sometimes desert back to forest. Today's creatures, the fennec fox, silver ants, fog-basking beetles, hardy acacia trees, show that life does not need to be the strongest to survive, but the most flexible. Small skills, subtle adaptations, are sometimes more important than brute strength. The Tuareg are the same. They did not conquer the Sahara with force. They live with it by listening to it. They know where water lies, when the wind will shift, which dune is safe to camp behind, when to stop and when to press on. They understand that life in the desert is not a war, but a harmony. They face harshness, but do not oppose it with pride. They respect it. They live softly in a hard world, and that is why they have endured for thousands of years. From this perspective, the Sahara becomes a mirror reflecting a great lesson for the future. Any land can change if conditions change. Ecosystems we think immortal can vanish if not protected. Lands that seem dead can be reborn if natural cycles return to the right rhythm. And life does not disappear. It only transforms from one shape to another. When you watch the Sahara at dusk, where the sun touches the horizon like a red flame on golden sand, you feel the breath of an ancient yet powerful planet. A planet that does not need us to exist, but that we need every single day. When we understand that, we can live more kindly with the ground beneath our feet, not out of fear of the future, but out of respect for the present. The Sahara is not a warning. It is a reminder that everything has cycles, that extreme states are part of the whole, and that the only thing that helps humans endure great changes is the ability to face truth without evasion, while keeping within ourselves the flexibility of water, the endurance of stone, and the softness of sand. If you stand in the Sahara at night, gazing at a sky full of stars, you will see it clearly. The silence is not the absence of movement, but movement that is very slow, very deep, very far away. Climate, ecosystems, the life cycle of the desert all turn to their own rhythms, and we humans are merely observers for one brief moment. The Sahara's journey is not finished. It will continue to change color, shape, climate, life, and our journey through this story is not finished either, because ahead lies one final chapter, the chapter of return. Of what lingers in the listener's mind after drifting 120 minutes across the desert, of the reflections that only a land as ancient as the Sahara can awaken in someone slowly falling asleep. As twilight slowly sinks behind the high dunes like soft walls of time, you feel the Sahara's gentle shift. By day, this place burns like the universe's furnace, but at night it slips into a different stillness. A silence so deep, every sound seems drawn into the abyss. Temperature plunges near freezing. The ground that blazed red suddenly feels cold as ancient stone. The entire space expands as though you have stepped into a primal atmosphere where the sky has never been touched by man-made light. Anyone who has stood in the Sahara at night says the first sensation is the closeness of the cosmos. Stars appear so sharp you feel you could reach out and touch them. Earth becomes a giant observatory where every boundary between human and universe dissolves. No streetlights, no smoke, no noise. Only the very deep vibration of the planet cooling after a long day, like the soft exhale of the world. Night wind in the Sahara is different from day wind. Day wind carries dry heat. Night wind is light, almost mist-like, brushing the sand without sound. It feels like the hand of something ancient caressing Earth's surface, leaving soft lines like secret writing in breath. The whole space becomes a natural temple where simply standing still lets you feel the slow heartbeat of the world. At night, you understand why the Tuareg call the desert the place where the soul is cleansed. Not because of religious holiness or mysticism, but because this silence makes every thought dissolve like sand carried away by wind. You feel small, yet simultaneously expanded, empty, yet filled with something nameless. Alien in a place with no footprints, yet familiar, as if you once belonged here in another life. That paradox is the Sahara's nature. It is where humans are diminished before infinite space, yet enlarged in profound stillness. When you sit on a cooled dune, you realize sand is not just sand. Sand is time ground into grains. Each grain was once stone, stone was once mountain, mountain was once seabed. Everything circles in an endless cycle that never stops. When you touch sand, you touch Earth's memory. A memory longer than any civilization, longer than every story humans have ever told. Earth stores that memory not in writing, but in sediment layers, dust grains, wind ripples, erosion scars. Sahara sand once lay beneath ancient seas, beneath green forests, beside great rivers, then was separated by wind into countless tiny grains. When you run your hand across the surface, you touch all of those things at once. An infinite cycle of life compressed into something very soft and very quiet. The night sky over the Sahara tells a different story, a story not of the ground, but of the heavens. When there are no clouds, no cities, no light, no dust, the sky becomes so clear the human eye can see the faint bands of the Milky Way. You can watch our galaxy stretch like a white-blue silk ribbon, star clusters glimmer like distant fires, planets shine like the eyes of far-off creatures watching you. All of it makes you understand that the night sky was once the map our ancestors used to navigate. The Tuareg look at the sky and see the way forward. Ancient Egyptians saw gods. Greek philosophers saw the great questions of existence. Here, in the middle of the Sahara, you look at the sky and see yourself, a tiny part of the universe listening to something vast, and you realize there is no loneliness in this scene. Instead, there is the feeling of standing at the center of something immense and calm, where every movement is extremely slow. Time at night in the Sahara flows like underground water. No hurry, no rush, no noise, no jolt. It simply flows, as though it knows everything has its moment. The Sahara at night is a laboratory of silence, a place where all sound is reduced to a single rhythm, the rhythm of Earth. All daily chaos is left at the edge of this sea of sand. Only you remain, and the planet's gentle breath. In this place you feel clearly that silence is not emptiness. Silence is a different kind of energy, so full it can fill every gap in the mind, so vast every thought scatters and disappears. When you look at dunes sinking into pale moonlight, you see that nightlight is not flat. It has depth, layers, soft silk-like lines running across the sand. Each breath of wind creates tiny ripples that make the desert surface resemble still water trembling under the moon. In that moment, dunes become primordial waves. The sea of sand becomes a real sea. Only these waves make no sound. They move by light and wind, slowly, mysteriously, as if breathing. The Tuareg believe night is when the desert reveals its true soul. Day is power, night is wisdom. Day is fire, night is water. Day is challenge, night is acceptance. When night falls, the desert is no longer frightening. It becomes strangely gentle, close, as though it is finally telling you a story it has kept too long. And the strange thing is, you do not need to understand every word to feel the story. You only need to sit still, breathe slowly, let your heartbeat merge with the softness of the Sahara night. This silence carries a different kind of awareness, that the things humans consider important are sometimes only tiny grains lifted by wind for a moment. That time is in no hurry, that the universe is not loud, that the fact you exist here, in this exact moment, between endless sand and endless sky, is rarer and more beautiful than you usually think. The Sahara at night makes the mind drift like sand. The longer you sit, the softer, lighter, deeper you sink. Dunes stretch to infinity before you. Sky stretches to infinity above, and you stand between two infinities. A tiny point, a part of a vast turning, yet also the place containing enough space for your mind to open like a wind-blown door. When you listen very carefully, you can hear sand shifting far below. Not loud, not clear, but the sound of tiny changes no one sees. Earth never stands still. Every grain is changing place. Every breeze is changing direction. Every star is moving. And you realize that even silence itself is moving in its own way. The Sahara is not just a desert. It is Earth's poem written in sun, wind, and silence. It is where time settles in every grain, where planetary memory lies beneath soft earth, where the cycle of life continues without need of explanation. When you can still hold this silence inside you, you will see more clearly one thing, that everything ending is only beginning again in another form, that there is no disappearance, only transformation. And when you close your eyes in the Sahara night, you feel yourself gently drifting into the borderland between wakefulness and sleep. A place where breath merges with wind, heartbeat with sand, consciousness with gentle darkness, and no boundary remains clear. One chapter closes not to end, but to open a new space where you can continue listening to the Sahara's silence within yourself. The 120-minute journey ends where every grain of sand whispers softly that everything changes, everything flows, and only when standing in the infinite stillness of the Sahara do we truly feel one simple thing. In the moment when no one is beside us, when there is no city noise, no hurried rhythm of daily life, we find ourselves again. Amid a sea of sand stretching to the horizon, you feel time slow as though Earth is revealing a very ancient breath. A breath that existed long before humans appeared and will continue long after we are gone. Each grain of sand is a fragment of memory, each breeze a message, each star a sign that the universe is still moving, very slowly, very gently, more tenderly than we imagine. When you close your eyes, you will see the Sahara is no longer a distant place, but an inner space, a space of silence, where every worry falls away like sand carried by wind, where every memory is returned to its proper place, where the mind no longer has to chase anything, and in that quiet, you hear yourself more clearly than ever before. The Sahara teaches us that even harshness has its beauty, that even emptiness can be full of peace, that even what seems unchanging is only temporary, and human life is the same, always moving, always transforming, always passing through its own cycles like dunes shifting shape in the dark. And when you leave the desert to return to ordinary life, a part of the Sahara remains inside you, like lingering warmth on your palm, like stars still caught behind closed eyelids, like a small wind that continues blowing in your mind whenever you need stillness. This journey ends, but the peace the Sahara gives remains, a gentle space you can return to whenever you wish. Just close your eyes. Just relax. Just let your mind open and drift lightly like a single grain of sand in the endless night sea. And now, as the breath of night softens, you too can let yourself drift into sleep. Slowly like dunes sinking into darkness. A sleep light as wind, deep as desert, and peaceful as the starry sky above you. Wishing you a peaceful night in the final breath of the Sahara, where every movement becomes soft and every dream begins with the absolute silence of sand and wind. Good night.